Hello, this is Matt's Wild About Nature. My name's Matt. Today we're going to talk about something that's all around us. Something that we use every day. Something that we need to survive. Something that also can tell us a little bit about our past and can tell us about our future. And if we use it correctly, we will have a future. Are you ready to find out what it is? Let's begin right now. In case you haven't figured it out yet, we're talking about trees. Now, trees are very important to us. They provide us with many different products, and they also provide us with something that's very, very important to us. So now, trees, besides just looking awesome and being awesome, they are also a pillar of our nature community. They're a part of the nature that we like to walk in, we enjoy. Sometimes, like, I like to just sit out in nature, in the woods, and just listen to nature. Trees talk. Not the way that you think, but if it's a little breezy, you can hear them creak and groan. To me, that's them talking. We can learn a lot from trees, but trees, more importantly, provide us with things that we need. They provide us with lumber for our homes, paper for our homework, toilet paper for when you have to go. They also can be used in insulation. Trees have a huge number of uses, more than I can even mention. If you want to figure out some, just go Google and see what trees are used for. Now, when we use trees, there's a law that says for every tree that's cut down or harvested, another one must be planted in its place. That is to ensure that this resource doesn't become limited. Now, trees are what's called a unlimited limited resource. Now, it might sound kind of like a contradiction, but what we mean by that is that trees can be grown and in 20, 30 years be harvested again to keep getting us lumber. But if that law is not abided by and trees aren't replanted, then our trees become a very limited resource. There's one other thing that trees provide that is super important for us, and that is the oxygen we breathe. And I'm going to talk about that next. Trees provide us oxygen through a process called photosynthesis. It's kind of a big word, but what it is that trees take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe through its leaves, and in a combination of carbon, water, and sunlight, they create sugar for themselves and a byproduct of oxygen. Trees, beyond giving us oxygen and products, also helps us. They pull the carbon from the air. So all the carbon that's up there in the atmosphere, trees pull that down. They need carbon to grow. And they pull that all out of the atmosphere. This whole thing about global warming, if we had more trees, we would have less carbon in the air. It pulls carbon out of the air and it uses it to grow. Now, trees are what's known as a carbon sink. What that means is that they pull carbon in and they store it in their roots. They use it to grow. When trees are cut down or a fire happens, that carbon is re-released into the atmosphere. So we need to prevent this from happening. And the best way to do that is preventing forest fires is a good thing. But go check out my video, Fire, Good or Bad, and you'll learn how fire is actually a good thing for us. But we also have to be careful that we don't burn too much. When you have a campfire and you're left over, and that ash that's left behind, that's carbon. That's carbon that's being released back into the atmosphere. Now it looks like ash that you can use, touch, and that is carbon. But the other carbon we can't see, and that's what's being released. So we need to hold on to these. We need to plant more trees to help pull more of that carbon out of the atmosphere. Trees also can tell us many things about our past and help us with our future. And we're going to go see what that's all about next. Now, as I'm talking about our past, how trees can help us with our past is through this. This is a tree that has been cut up, been taken down possibly because it's dead or whatever reason. But trees have what's called tree rings. So tree rings are a way of telling how old a tree is. So tree rings, as trees grow, they lay down these rings. These are growth rings. Now, these growth rings can tell us many different things about the climate of which this tree grew. If it has very narrow rings, it grew very slow and there was very little rain. If it's really wide rings, then it grew fast, laid down a lot of material, and it was very, very wet. Now, scientists called climologists can use tree rings to look at what the climate was back, say, 30 years. Say one of these trees, let's say the redwoods of California, could be over 800 years old. So when one falls or one has to be cut down because it's dead or something, they can go back and they can look at and see what the climate was like 800 years ago. Now that's not just the trees that we have today. Something called petrified wood, which is trees that have become fossilized. You can still see tree rings in that, especially if you cut it in half. And another set of scientists called paleoclimologists, and they can look at to see what the climate was thousands and thousands of years ago. And it helps us to make models of where things could be going. The tree rings on today's trees and trees from thousands of years ago can all show the same thing. They show patterns. They show change. They show climate shifts. It's very important to study these. And you don't have to be a climologist to study your climate. If you have trees in your backyard, or even if you go to some place where you can find trees that have been cut down, you can count the rings, and using a little bit of science and your brain, you can see what the climate was at the time that this tree lived. So as you can see, trees are very important. They can teach us about our past. They can help us understand our future. They can help us have a future. And in the long run, we really wouldn't be here without trees. So until next time, stay wild.